All right. Well, welcome back to a new episode of Talk Fiber to Me, Baby. This is not the same day we recorded the first episode, as evidenced by my vest now being zipped up, and I don't have glasses on anymore.
I took off my jacket.
Different day, completely different topics. Welcome back, everybody, to Talk Fiber to Me, Baby. I'm Caleb Etheridge again, your moderator and co-owner of EPC. This is Josh Etheridge, our Chief Strategic Officer and co-owner as well of EPC. How you doing today, brother?
Man, I'm doing good. They wouldn't let me have any more coffee, so this is water.
Nice, absolutely.
I always like to
keeping it real for the people.
Yeah, I don't want to be a faker.
Tell them what's in there. Is it just water?
It's just water today. If we film a night episode, no telling.
Man, all bets are off.
All bets are off.
All right, again, want to touch base on what we're doing here with the podcast. We again wanted to take an opportunity to explain, to talk about all things fiber optic.
Let's just talk fiber to me, baby.
Yeah.
Let's talk that.
And do it in a way that, is practical, is useful for the folks out there that is trying to navigate this wild, wild west of BEAD applications, or what process is my state in, or I'm in the hyperscale mode and I'm trying to figure out how to get into that industry. From two guys that just really got it together about, 3 days ago. No, we started the thing about seven years back and really did it between Josh and I and just a few others. And we've been blessed thus far to create a company that now has about 120 employees and probably the same or not more in subcontract labor. And just, bringing you that kind of perspective of like, we didn't have it all figured out. We're probably squarely where some of y'all feel like you may be at right now. So we just want to be here to help. We just want to sit here and talk about things. If you like what you're hearing, click, subscribe, comment, tell us what you want to hear. More of it.
You follow a thing?
Do something different. Yeah, you can follow, I believe. Looking over at the technical side, yes, they can follow. All right. So, get involved. Let us hear your feedback. We want to pick up the subjects, talk about the things that's important to y'all, but, just in the scope of all things fiber optic. It's Talk Fiber to Me, Baby today, like you see on Josh's shirt. But, one day it might stray into Talk Whatever to Me, Baby. So it's up to y'all. It's up to the viewers.
The baby. It really drives it home. We
love the babies.
That's because we know what we're talking about, baby.
All right, so that takes care of that. We're going to be dropping this thing every other Friday, so be looking for this this format coming out, and we look forward to hearing from y'all too. Like I said,
to speak on, you were talking about BEAD applications. I think one of the places, when we're in these like conventions, or we go to these places where they have different vendors and stuff there, when we're talking to new customers or even existing customers, a lot of the time we're talking about realities in the construction portion of it. I would even venture to say that in my first meet with Vineeth and Thomas here in the state of Louisiana, it was talking about the realisms of deployment, and that's kind of how I probably came on a little strong first time I talked to him.
A little bit.
I think my first words to Vineeth was in a green room. We were both going to talk about workforce development.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Who are you again?" And I was like, "Are you Vineeth?" with a pointed finger, And he's like, "Yeah." And we sat down and we started talking. I said, "Here's a headline. We put out all this. Louisiana fails again." And he was like, "Why would that happen?" Because you go out to some of these rural farms, you go, 5,000 feet to catch one farmer, and he turns his crops every year. What if he cuts it? It's not worth going back out there as a provider to spend all that money and have it fixed, as you'll never recoup the money, over time.
And let me dial that down just a half a bit to what Josh is explaining, the financials of this situation here just a little bit more. We're going to pay for all of this subsidy to go out in these networks to get built.
Yeah.
Now they're built and they're in operation, and they've been turned over to the internet service provider who's built it. And you've paid with taxpayer dollars for a line to be ran 2 miles down a rural road to a house that the farmer himself may own it, that cut the line. But you've laid that in the ground, and now here comes the farmer with his plow or something. He may be a little bit deeper that day, or it's hung on the telephone poles.
Yeah.
and it's a combine, and it just reaches up there and it clips the top of it. Well, now you got to tear in the line. The subscriber at the end of the line is out of internet.
Yeah.
You got paid to build that, but now you've got a $3,000 to $5,000 or more bill coming to the internet service provider to resplice that line and get that customer back up. That customer is probably paying $100 a month. How long will it take for you to recoup?
48 to 60 months.
So this is kind of what Josh saw coming. And if you have that happen enough, you're going to look it up in 2 or 3 years, and you're going to have this headline Josh had kind of went to Beneath about was, Louisiana spends $90 million to build rural broadband. 2 years later, half capacity. It doesn't look good.
Yeah, and he was like, can I get your number? And he was so receptive, super. I think that was the kind of the birth of a friendship, if you will, because he was like, I'm going to, this guy doesn't mind telling me how it is because I don't even know this guy. And after that, it was kind of a talk back and forth as to how things are going between, us and the state. And I know that we got involved a lot with BEAD coming out and what the realities of that looks like. And so, these are things we like to talk about. Yeah. And so when you brought up, like, where are you in your BEAD applications, not just in your applications, but how are you looking at the future? How are you looking at the resiliency of your network over time? Yeah. And so we definitely want to touch on those things.
Yeah. And so right now, I want to take us to where we are, I would say now. It's a great look into the future and where it's going to go and making sure that we're prepared and all those considerations that need to be taken. I think this kind of links into that. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the catalyst, kind of RY as a company, how that ties into this couple of things that I know even in that story we're alluding to, right?
Yeah,
is
we'll get there.
How we're going to take what's going on with these different government-funded programs and use them very usefully to have an effect on our local economies in rural America that we're building in. So take me through, I guess let you get kicked off with the kind of little bit more of that origin story we talked about, in the first episode.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Definitely 2 weeks ago.
And so tell me a little bit more about that and kind of take us into that. Let's start year 2 or 3. Kind of we're doing the Leadership Washita thing. Well, what we saw coming.
It's worth saying what Leadership Washita was. It's a leadership program to allow people in the community to understand what businesses are facing in our community. And not just businesses, but political leaders. What are their challenges? What are their triumphs? And let's look at how our community's doing as a whole and what the needs are. When we got in it, and I'm going to let you tell this story because you did such a better job of it, but we got into Leadership Washita and we had to do SimSoc, which is a simulated society where we have to push through.
Don't tell all the dirty secrets.
I'm not, there's a river rule amongst SimSoc, but long story short, we simulated the society and we realized that there are issues even in workforce. That is a bottleneck. And as we started talking to some of the people in our group of some of the workforce issues, turns out Wendy Tosson, who at the time was the vice chancellor for Louisiana Delta Community College, she said, "You guys are having trouble finding people." And we said, "Yeah, there's going to be a lot of money coming." We knew about the Gumbo program, which was coming through Louisiana. It's a broadband funding program, and we knew it was going to stimulate a lot of jobs, and we knew we were going to need more because at the time we were 30 people, maybe 30 people.
Well, I think it really speaks to to your answer, yes. But going back to that first story, it's just more foresight.
Yeah, we
saw Gumbo. We knew RDOF was behind it. We actually had been screaming from the mountaintops down at damage prevention summits and places like that we didn't have the workforce that we needed in order to stay ahead. Like, we're talking about deploying millions of dollars of infrastructure over a very crunched, span of time. How are we even going to get line locators out there in front of us that are going to be able to keep up with all these directional drills and all this deployment we're going to have over a massive geography and be able to locate those other utilities so that we don't damage them during our deployment when we don't have the workforce? And we were in that Leadership Washita forum 1 month when we brought that same thing up, and that's when she raised her hand and looked at us and said, "We can help you with that."
Yeah, like I said, you just do a better job of remembering it. I've had so many long nights since then. But
a lot of tequila.
A lot of tequilas and scotches, so that's messed me up. But I will say that I do remember coming to this epiphany used to say, hey, if we can just employ, at the time we were like 15, 20 people. We were like, oh, if we can give a great living to 15 or 20 people, we can ride off into the sunset knowing that we did something good for our community. And that was kind of a small inkling of what our why was going to be. Mm-hmm. And then once we realized that we can make a true difference in the economy of our local area by hiring these people and deploying them while deploying internet. And, people may not know this about us, but we have a gas division as well. So as we're deploying through gas distribution pipes and other things, we thought, oh my gosh, we could make a bigger difference in our area. And that's when we started joining the chamber to a bigger extent. We became, really involved in workforce development and the rules around workforce development, even to the point of creating a VR simulated curriculum to learn how to drill and getting that in Louisiana Delta Community College and seeing those people come through, 5, 6, 8 people at a time, learning how to do a trade from nothing to something, and then coming in with us if we were able to hire them.
Yeah, and so I would say that was one of the evolutions of our company. Our why, like you touched on, when we first started, I said, if we could just provide good, steady paying jobs, allow a pathway for people to put food on their table for their families, 20 or 30 people for the next 20 or 30 years, I think is how we, it said it. We pat ourselves on the back, rest easy. There's evolutions to that, right? I feel like you said, I felt like it was very noble. A lot of people get into this business for the wrong reason. They see dollar signs. They don't realize and here's the thing about whys and passions. If you don't start with that why and that passion, the bad days are coming and you will lay down.
Yeah.
Bottom line, you've got to know what it's about. You've got to know people ask me all the time, what's the one piece of advice that you would give? And I'd say, find something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
If you're not passionate, and that doesn't just go for entrepreneurship. That goes for any career and any job that you're pursuing. If you're not passionate about that job to start with, the bad days are going to come. And when those bad days come, what's going to drive you to get out of bed the next morning when all the other things aren't getting fulfilled? It's that passion. And so our why, I feel like, got started out on the right foot. But in this forum, we say, we need these people.
Yeah.
And Wendy raises her hand and says, Louisiana Delta Community College can help you with that. And I think through that partnership, as it went on, we started seeing as a company that our why was evolving. It was becoming a greater scope, a greater scale. And I think that's what born our ultimate mission and goal was what? For every person that's willing to have a job to have the opportunity to do so. And then the second part of that is we hatched a way in our business model to take that local approach everywhere. And how well does that tie in with these local government funded rural broadband places? We've started the workforce development piece. Mm-hmm. You've got these local rural communities, and we can speak to that directly because we grew up with a lot of these people and now they're team members at EPC. But we know how great of a workforce is out there in rural America. We know that they're hardworking people. We know that they possess the right values. They just don't have the skills, if you want to categorize it as such, the skills to do what we do. Well, guess what? Good news. It ain't rocket science. 6 to 8 weeks over at Delta Community College, we put them through a program that we devised. All of a sudden, they've got the skills. They go back out and they participate in the build. And then I want you to talk a little bit about the sustainability piece of that. Go back to that conversation. Again, there was an allusion there to that conversation with Vineeth. Now you have a solution to this. We've got a fiber cut down a dirt road.
Well, you look at the sustainability portion of it, and truthfully, just monetarily, it can't be sustained by a non-local workforce. It is not feasible monetarily.
Just doesn't work.
So, one of the things that we do as a company is that once we build a network, as we're building it, we use it as a springboard because you have to make money, right? You have to get in there and you have to have a big build to sustain the growth of a company and to go to the next spot and do that as well. But while you're doing it, you need to be finding a local workforce, local people, because everybody knows, the people that understand the problems of something are the people that assembled it. Mm-hmm. And they built it. And so if you have somebody that was in on the build, maybe midway or earlier, and they work through it and they say, I would like to just have a sustainable job in my area. They're getting on-the-job training after the majority of the subcontractors and our larger portion of our workforce leaves. Somebody's got to be able to be there and be on call for strikes, for line extensions, for breaks, just for new customer acquisition. They have to be there, and they have to be able to leave their house and go straight to the place they're going to be working that day, handle business, and go home that day. If we have to pay for a hotel every single night to keep that person in market, it's not monetarily feasible. If I've got to send a 6-person crew every time something gets struck, it's not monetarily feasible to the ISP. And that's Internet Service Provider for those of you that don't know. But it's not fair to them. And that's one of the things we do as well, that we're always thinking as an ISP. We always think about, what's feasible for them, because their wins are our wins, right? We're a partner in this for the most part. I want to go back to how we got into funding mechanisms. We were down. We had never heard about RDOF. We had heard about RDOF, but nobody else had. We went down to damage prevention, which is 811 puts that on every year in Baton Rouge, and of course they have it in every state. But we went down and we were talking to them about workforce development and who's going to be there to help train these locators and who's getting people on board. And we talked to several different vendors that locate, and they were like, we'll just do like we always do, and we'll just hire a bunch of people. But people didn't realize the gravity of the situation with RDOF putting in $49 billion.
What was the numbers that came through in the survey, the magnitude of the jobs that were going to be needed in order to deploy just in Louisiana?
So the PCCA did a survey with the FBA, Fiber Broadband Association, and they came up with the survey that said that just Louisiana needs 20,000 workers to complete. That's just BEAD. They didn't do so there's several different ways of looking at this, but 20,000 is just to complete BEAD. And that's a pretty simple thing to figure out. But I don't know if they actually took in or if they did, but it wasn't clarified in the report. But do we take in these legacy providers, right, that are already currently in these markets, that's going to deploy funds, capital funds, to actually moat and protect their territories from the people coming in from these rural areas? They're going to build just to make sure that they have network in those areas. So maybe that is, in every area, 10 to 20 million, maybe 30 million that they're going to moat their area with. That takes builders too. Well, what about the RDOF that's already been used, and still maybe they're at a 40% milestone right now, and they still have 60% to get 60 more percent to grow to build out with the BEAD? What is that going to look like? And then there's USDA and Reconnect. Those builds are still going on. Middle miles are still going on. There's all these different deals. I don't know if those all were in that report, if it was just BEAD, but 20,000 is still a lot just for Louisiana. And
it's a ton of people. I mean, it's a ton of people that's needed. And so I go back to kind of the why of EPC and creating jobs for people that's willing to do so. That just doesn't happen out of thin air. And so recapping that, you've got a ton of need. You've got a pathway that we've created, I'm very proud of, and I know you are too, that takes people out of the places that we are building, and not just takes people out of our community, but if we go over into South Louisiana, if we go over into Texas, wherever, we start looking at long-term maintenance contracts, because that enables that model. ISPs, if you're listening and you're thinking about sustainability on the back end and the maintenance side, listen up. We said at the beginning we were going to provide you with useful, actionable information in all of these different dynamics that's going on. You will have to have a sustainable workforce at the end of this thing. And the best way we see to do that is to go into those areas, talk with those people that you're building with. If we're building with you, we're going to immediately start talking about a maintenance contract on the back end. As soon as that starts solidifying, we know that we've got enough confidence then that we can start putting out local job requisitions in these areas we're building in, starting to employ your locals. Find your good people, your hardworking people, send them back to our course, give them the skills they need in 6 to 8 weeks, let them go back out, participate in the build, who to maintain it better than the people who built it, right?
Yeah.
And then they're going to stay behind as our construction crews withdraw. And now you've got a local, sustainable workforce. You've taken the fiber boom, you've turned it into an economic boom for the communities that we serve.
Well, and there's a sustainability portion to this from the ISP's perspective. I mean, we're speaking to it right now, but there's a monetary side to that too. Aside from just paying for the maintenance, there is penetration. Like how and sustaining that penetration, because there's going to be fringe people that come in and take. They're going to be second providers, and they may be able to take, based on customer service, certain or the service you're providing, certain penetration from your model. You made this model based on getting a certain percentage of penetration in that area. Well, when you have somebody locally working in that area, their grandmother, their aunt, their dad is a preacher, a singer, or a piano player at a local church. They could sing your praises. A waterman. They work for the city government in some way, or the municipality in that area. They are able to either sing your praises or take in information as to what the problems are. And so when you have a local presence there, you have an ear on the ground to know if people are satisfied with their service or not. And so there's a sustainability factor, because over time, if they were sustainable monetarily, they would have already done them, right? That your big boys would have already built those areas because they have a return. The truth is that they need these subsidies to actually build out these areas to make it feasible to sustain them over time, because you didn't have any build costs, so you don't have to keep paying a note that you use to build it out. So that you take that away, that's great. But the problem is, if you start losing penetration in those areas due to a second provider or no maintenance or whatever it may be, and the biggest catalyst of that is bad service, right? Like you don't feel like you have good service there. Like people won't, if you have a down line, somebody doesn't come out there immediately and fix it. And having a local presence in those areas can keep that sustainability for the ISP on a long term.
Long story short, your people can always make or break you.
Yeah.
Right? They make or break you. Your competitive advantage in the long game is going to be from a sustainability, and like I said, it's going to be your people. It's going to be that local workforce. Your local workforce is going to be your competitive advantage.
Yeah, and to take us back to the why, I think that EPC in general, we've had a little bit of deviation over the last little while. It's like you've kind of taken on your persona in the company as CEO, and then I've taken on a persona in the company as CSO. We both have our own whys. You kind of took that workforce development and our people portion, and then my why kind of moved into these areas that we're serving. That's what I'm speaking to all the time. I'm out there with the sales team a lot. So, and we're both personally from a rural area. And so, it kind of develops into these different factors, and that's okay. I want to say that to the people that's listening, that if your why develops over time, that's not a problem. You've just found something that you're passionate about. And I'm passionate about, when I saw COVID come through, my wife was in nurse practitioner school, and we had a child, that was 4 years old, 5 years old. And so, we couldn't take them to daycare. We didn't have Netflix at the house. And what if my kid was in school in a rural area? We had HughesNet at the time, and we were in the middle of nowhere. And so that was when I started realizing that telehealth and rural remote learning and e-commerce from home can make or break a rural area. And so that became my why, was to show, the nation that our rural areas are shrinking. People are going to more urban areas, and the reason they're going is, number one question when you buy a house: what is it?
What's the internet like here?
What's the internet like? It's not what's the power, how clean is the water. It is what kind of internet do you guys have? And so, you're seeing mom and dad giving these farms to their kids, and their kids are like, I'd rather die than live out there. You know why? Because there's no internet. It's too far out. They can't be with their people they love, because that's what the internet provides. It provides a window to see what's going on in bigger areas without losing the rural areas.
And I think that's a perfect segue into kind of finishing this and wrapping this one up. We've established that the efforts are admirable and that is needed. We've established a lot of how the ways they are. It's the importance of lifting up these communities and the telehealth and the e-commerce piece that we're not going to explore fully, and we'll probably get into that though. Like, that's such a huge... I truly believe our next biggest technological innovation is coming from rural America now. There is somebody out there with a fantastic idea that just can't get it to market, and this is going to bring them that pathway, that accessibility, in order to bring it to market and in order to get it scaled. I think it's going to be one of the biggest things we see. It's a point of emphasis, I know, with the programs, but just, I don't know if you're going to call it, I would like to call it a byproduct that we're going to see, that's going to be a pleasant surprise that comes out of this deal. But we've established Then the workforce piece and how we're enabling communities to go to work through this deal and creating real deal sustainable jobs. So we kind of established the worthy cause that these programs are. So that kind of takes us to our big finish. We know there's been a lot of talk out there about, is this a worthy cause? Is it a worthy cause that maybe just isn't being managed or deployed the correct way? Give me your thoughts on what you're hearing out of Washington, D.C., which we will be visiting very soon for D.C. Mardi Gras and the inauguration. But give me your thoughts on what you're hearing from some of the representatives in the different areas, and what's your take on what they're saying? Your agreement? You think it's neither here nor, one way or the other, but somewhere in the middle? Just kind of take me through that.
I mean, people are worried. The NTIA, could have new leadership. You're not hearing that directly, but there are certain state senators or federal senators that are asking for new leadership and a new program to take it back to the drawing board. We've messed this up. We didn't get it out fast enough. I would say educate yourselves. I would say to them, and I think that they need to look at past programs and how they went and what it took to get to where we are. One of the problems is they're saying it didn't get out fast enough. We gave all this money and it didn't get out fast enough. My viewpoint on this is it took a lot of preparing just to get to where we are. And you look at the state of Louisiana, we moved really quick. We're kind of the model across the U.S. as to how to get it out fast and efficient. Props to both Vineeth and Thomas and their office and really the state legislature for getting this out and getting it done so well. But it can be done well once prepared. But the problem was there was so many missing factors moving up to this point that we had to get in a pile, fabric IDs and other mapping issues that people just took for granted that they thought we already had somewhere in some vault somewhere, and we didn't. And so, yes, we could have gave money to anybody quickly and just handed it to them. But what type of audit system would you have? What type of responsibility and accountability would you have from the ISPs? You could have programs that just got, pissed off in the wind, and then afterwards we're like, we served 100 houses or 1,000 houses.
I think it's fair to say that the thing that it's kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth in a little bit of a way, because you're pointing to past programs and maybe the failures that they see in that, but they're also complaining about the one thing that would have made those programs successful, and that's preparation.
Yeah.
These programs failed. This is why we shouldn't do this program. And also, this program's failing because it's actually taking the time to prepare, which is what these programs didn't do, which led to their failure.
That's right.
We can't have that either. It's not moving fast enough. I would say, like anybody else will tell you, that success is in the preparation.
Yeah, and that's something we're going to talk about in Washington is don't shake it up so bad that we can't keep moving forward. And I'll tell you, it should be a concern for people in Congress and in the legislature and federally, because if it takes too long to get it together, that's their constituency, especially the Conservative Party. As far as I'm concerned, the Conservative Party has always been give more power to the states, right? Take less up from the Fed. And it's ironic that some of the conservative leaders that's in Washington right now are the ones screaming for give the power back to the Fed and we'll tell you how to spend it.
Oh, we need to relax certain guidelines and we need to add in certain guidelines. And I'm going, okay, this thing started out as we're going to give it to the states and let them figure it out. Just kind of keep it in between the mayonnaise and the mustard, as they say. But now we're going, no, we need to mandate things that they need to follow, which kind of sounds counterintuitive to what you normally hear out of a conservatively controlled Washington, D.C.
You're right. And the states know how to serve their constituents, their people. Every state has their own unique set of circumstances, whether it be rock for underground and you need to go more aerial, whether it be alternative technologies. We talk about LEOs, we talk about wireless. There is a place for all those things. But is there a blank slate? Is there a broad stroke of the pen that could just give everybody one technology? No, there's not, and serve adequately. Let me ask you this, to your constituents, if you're a conservative leader that is now in the control of both the House and the Senate, would you want to look at the people that voted you into office and be like, I don't believe that you are deserving of the tool? And I don't call it a subsidy, I call it a tool, because you're giving rural areas a tool to use in e-commerce, to better their lives. You're not giving them money to say, just figure it out. You're giving them a tool that could use in e-commerce, e-learning, to go to college, for telehealth. These are tools. You're going to look at them and say, these people in urban areas, who didn't vote me in, by the way. Urban areas don't typically vote in conservative leaders. You're not deserving of the same technology that we're going to give to them. We're just going to give you LEOs or wireless, which is proven to not be as rigid, not be as fast, and not be as really the only thing limiting fiber is how fast you can shoot a laser, how much information can you move, right? But the limiting factor on LEOs and wireless is the technology. We're not there yet. We're greater than we were. We've made leaps and bounds in wireless and in LEOs.
I think the overall point is these states understand this better than anyone else from their state to state. And so why would we be advocating at the federal level to now start putting in these guidelines that tell these states how they have to deploy? I think the most simple discussion and way to relate it to the viewers is this underground versus aerial versus satellite, like you're talking about LEOs versus fixed wireless. And we're having discussions back in Washington about how we're going to carve some out. We want to relax or mandate that you've got to use so much percentage towards one of these technologies. I don't understand why we don't just keep it at let the states decide for themselves what's best for those states. In Louisiana, as an example, we are, what was the claim, 95%? Don't quote me on that, about 95% of it's going underground. Why do you think they're doing that? It's because we deal with hurricanes, unfortunately.
Yeah,
and so we know we don't need a lot of infrastructure in the air because a hurricane can come and be very damaging to that. Does it cost more initially in deployment? Absolutely. Is it more resilient in the long term? It's going to be a better product? Absolutely. We know that about our state. If somebody were to come in from the federal level and say, it doesn't matter, you have to put X amount of percentage or some mandate on a certain technology, it just doesn't make sense. I don't understand why we're having conversations about taking it from the states and not letting them just decide themselves.
I agree. I think that we're going to be, you know, if you guys are listening or tuned in, or if you watch this and you got this far in the podcast, you know, leave comments, follow, you know, send in an email to us, and we'll post a link on with this podcast as to where you can send those. But you know, send something to us to let us know how you feel about it. We will be in Washington D.C. over Mardi Gras, and when was that? So the inauguration all the way
19th through the 26th, we're going to be up in D.C. So if you're thinking of some things, if you've got input, comments,
come see us in D.C. That'd be cool.
Yes, I just love the way Josh raised his voice as he went to talk to the people like they're out in the crowd.
Hey, listen.
The lapel mic's right here, brother.
This is new to me. I don't know what's going on.
For all to hear, we will be in Washington, D.C., 19th to 26th.
Turn down the mic at this point, Mr. Technical
Comments,
man.
questions, anything you would like us to bring up. We'll be having lots of great meetings with our legislatives and representatives and others that have a stake in this battle as well.
We'll also be going to a couple of balls.
And we're going to have a little fun while we're at it.
Gonna wear.
If you need to know what the tux for the night or the outfit of the day looks like.
They said they wanted us to wear tails this year, so that's
I saw that request by Captain Ron.
Is it Captain Ron? Is that a movie? That's a movie.
Thank y'all for joining in. This has been another episode of Talk Fiber to Me, baby. It's great having you, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.
Bye, guys.